Since 2022, small cap earnings have basically been moving sideways, indicating that the broader economy hasn't really picked up. Now compare that to the S&P 500, where earnings have been rising steadily since 2023 and have already hit new highs. That tells us that the recovery we've seen so far has actually been quite narrow. Because while certain areas of the economy are doing well, mostly the big names, there hasn't been a real recovery for the average business or the average person. And when that's the case, most people aren't in a position to take on excess risk or chase speculative assets. That's one of the key reasons why large caps have significantly outperformed small caps in this bull market. We can see that clearly through this chart showing the S&P 500 relative to the Russell 2000, essentially large caps versus small caps. Since the bottom in 2021, large caps have outperformed small caps by nearly 70%. So capital has flowed into large caps as investors sought safety and stability in this uncertain and narrow economic recovery backdrop. And this same narrow dynamic has been showing up in the crypto market too. We can see that by adding the chart of Bitcoin dominance on top of this chart. There's quite a close relationship between these two lines, and this makes sense. If the S&P 500 is outperforming small caps, it means that investors are a lot more confident in these blue chip large cap companies that hold less risk. They still want to participate in the stock market, but they're only willing to buy the very safe large cap companies. And that is also reflected in the behavior of crypto investors. During these moments where you have a narrow economic recovery and stock market recovery, you also have a narrow recovery in the crypto market. This is exactly what we've had since August of 2022, with Bitcoin's dominance rising steadily, indicating that most of the capital flowing into crypto has been concentrated in Bitcoin. But here's where this gets even more actionable. This relationship doesn't just explain what's happening today. It can in fact help us anticipate what's coming next. You see, the performance of the S&P 500 relative to small caps actually leads Bitcoin dominance. For instance, here in 2016, small caps began outperforming the S&P 500, reflecting a risk-on environment in the stock market. That was followed by a big decline in Bitcoin's dominance a few months later, as a full-fledged alt season unfolded. The same thing happened here in April of 2020. Small caps outperformed the S&P 500 starting here, and a few months later in January 2021, alt season began as Bitcoin's dominance fell. Then, in mid-2021, small caps began to underperform the S&P 500, and just a few months later, Bitcoin dominance began to rise as well. This lag between the altcoin market and the performance of small caps relative to the S&P 500 is something we watch very closely at Bravo's research, because it gives us a potential early signal of when capital might begin rotating into altcoins.